Go. Well, good morning, everybody, again, and welcome. We are just days away from the end of voting, Tuesday, 8 o'clock, and then the balloting, the counting will begin, and there'll be some results Tuesday night, Wednesday, Thursday. It'll take a while, but I don't know if you've all seen the voters pamphlet at your family's house and had a chance to look through, look at the pictures, read any of it. If you have questions, I can't say I've read every page, but I've done quite a bit of reading in it. We'll do the best I can to answer your questions. And if we run out of questions, I'll start asking you questions about the mock election I think you guys may be taking part in. So who wants to go first? Anything come up since the last time we chatted you want to ask about? Who wants to go second? No one ever wants to go first. So who wants to go second?
Martha. I already have an order. Adrian is going.
All right. That's okay. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Martha. So I was wondering, like Jay Inslee, he keeps talking about stuff he's done in the past and the money he spent on various things to improve Washington, but he doesn't have a clear plan on what he's going to do in this term if he's elected. So
you're right about that. I mean, he has not many candidates, and the governor is one of them, has not talked very specifically about what he wants to do if he's elected in the next 4 years. One of his themes has been he wants to just continue the progress. So one has to then interpret what does he mean by that, and what he's done so far and what the legislature has done in his last 4 years is increase spending in a lot of areas of government, education, services for the mentally ill, law enforcement, all of those areas. So one can only presume that he wants to continue to increase spending in all of those areas. Voters have to decide if that's enough for them or if they want more specifics. I mean, we all know, I think we chatted about this last time, about education, and the Supreme Court has said you've got to fully fund schools like the ones you're in, and the teacher, make sure they're paying, the state pays the teacher's salary by September of next year, or 2018. So he's going to have to come up with specifics for that. I think last time we chatted too, there was a lot of interest in the guns and some of the rules around guns. He is going to be pressured, and maybe we'll work on banning the sale of assault weapons and other new restrictions on who can buy a gun and who can own a gun, and what law enforcement can do. So you'll see some things, but you're right. There has not been a real specific plan of things he wants to do if he's elected. And it's hard to decide as a voter whether that's good enough.
Is this normal behavior for incumbents to just rest on what they've done?
When when you've already won, if you're an incumbent, and you often do talk about what you've accomplished to remind people, hey, these are the things we did, or I did as a lawmaker or governor or whatever position they hold, city council person, and then you hope the voters think, oh, that was good. Yeah, let's go ahead and put that person back in and let them do some more. And if they don't think it's good, then they'll say, oh, that's a good reason to change. One of the reasons candidates don't talk about too specific what they want to do in the future is then they have to do it, or if they don't want to make promises they can't keep. And it does concern people if they tell too much of what they would like to do. So it is typical, unfortunately, in our election system, that people talk about the past more than the future.
Thank you.
Oh, it's on.
Oh, this looks like a long question. It came with paper.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Good morning, my name is Adrian, and my question for you is, Bill Bryant says he wants to put funding into new teachers instead of old teachers. What is the advantage of young teachers opposed to older, more experienced teachers?
Well, I think sometimes Mr. Bryant isn't necessarily talking about young teachers versus old teachers. He is trying to increase the number of teachers out there. And so he wants to put money into hiring more teachers. I don't think, my experience in talking to him, I don't think he sees there's a value in the age, but he does want to have folks that are new to education and new to the classroom who can bring ideas that, maybe new technology, new apps. And so in that regard, he wants new more people in the classroom, more new teachers, but not necessarily young teachers. You know, there are a lot of professionals out there in industries like, let's take aerospace. Then they may retire from aerospace, or they may retire from the military, and they're still, you know, in their 40s. So they want to do something else for a second career, and that can be education. He'd like to see some of those folks go into education. And so I think it's about getting new teachers, but not necessarily by age.
In the debate, he did say that Inslee was more interested in increasing pay for older teachers, though.
Right. Teachers, so there was an initiative that the voters passed in the year 2000 that said every 2 years with the budget, teachers are entitled to a cost of living increase. For several years, they didn't get a cost of living increase, so they didn't get any kind of bump in their pay. And what Governor Inslee's talking about is that these teachers who have been here for a while have gone a number of years without a pay increase, and that's what he wants, to put more money into those, to restore those pay increases they didn't get. So when he's talking about older teachers, that's what he's referring to. And he feels like the teachers, they got a raw deal, and the teachers support him, and he wants to make sure they know that if he's elected, he's going to work hard to get them money that they didn't get from earlier years. Mr. Bryant is moving forward, and he tends to feel that teachers all around the state should make close to the same salary. You may not know this. I can't speak for Monroe, but I've written stories about in Everett. If you're a teacher in Everett and you've been teaching for 29 years and you're at the top of the scale, you're going to make about just under $100,000 a year. But if you're in a place like Pasco, which is in the middle of the state, in the south there, and you've been teaching 29 years and you're at the top of the scale, you might make around $70,000. So there's a big difference, and even though you have the same experience. And I think that's also what Mr. Bryant is trying to figure out. How can you have teachers with the same amount of experience make closer to the same amount of money?
Why is it that teachers make less money than other professions like principals or professors?
Well, I mean, if you're staying in education, like professors or principals, there is I have to go back. I don't know professors' salaries. Not all professors make necessarily more than classroom teachers. It depends on their experience. Principals do, because they're in a supervisor role, and that's sort of the way the schools are arranged. If you're running the school, like running a business, you're going to get paid a salary that's higher than those who you're supervising, the teachers. But the teacher pay, like pay for any job, often depends on the market. It depends on what in this case, the public is willing to pay. As I was saying, teachers in Everett and Mukilteo and other parts of Snohomish County make more money than teachers in other parts of the state. And that's because the residents in the area want to pay their teachers more, so they pay higher taxes. But it's one of those things about our society. Police officers, teachers, firefighters, they'll make less money than maybe people working on building bridges and building airplanes. And that's just the way the economy of our country likes to work. That's capitalism, as they say.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Cornfeld. My name's Sean, and my question for you is, here, 1 minute.
Get close to the microphone.
My question for you is, what do you think in the debate between the governors, they were discussing the adequate minimum wage. Bryant opposed raising the minimum wage. What do you think the adequate minimum wage should be statewide?
What do I think it should be statewide?
Yeah.
Well, that's a hard question. In my opinion, I've never really thought about what I think the right wage should be. There's a couple of things, though, about the minimum wage in this initiative. I can tell you. One thing I read in there is, and I did not know, is that the minimum wage in the state, the way the law is written, applies only to those if you're 18 years or older. So if you're 16 or 17, the way the law is written and the way the initiative's written, you won't get a pay raise automatically. Your boss may give you one, but they don't have to. The difference between Bill Bryant and Jay Inslee on the minimum wage is that Bill Bryant says maybe you need to pay someone $13.50 an hour in Seattle, where it's expensive, but you don't necessarily have to pay that same person, the same job, $13.50 an hour in another part of the state where it's not as expensive to live, and so he wants more freedom for communities to set their own wage, and he believes in a statewide level where it is now, which is just under $10 an hour. And he thinks other communities should decide how high they want to go. You know, if this passes, there'll still be a $15 an hour wage in some places in the state, which is higher than the initiative. That's the primary thing that they're different on.
Okay.
And to answer your first question, I don't know what the minimum wage should be because I know how much I made. I know how old I am. I can tell you when I worked in high school, when I worked in Jack in the Box, I got paid $3.70 an hour. And that was a long time ago. So, you know, it does change over the years and may be needed.
Thank you, Mr. Kornfeld.
Good morning, Mr. Kornfeld. My name is Eva, and my question also involves the minimum wage. If we add more money to the minimum wage, Jay Inslee says that it will help the homeless get homes, but what will that do to Washington's family already in homes?
You want to know how it'll affect those who already have homes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that it won't hurt them. And what happens if you have more people who are in homes and more people are paying the taxes as a homeowner or paying rent if they're renting their house, that helps the entire economy. So everybody benefits. If you have fewer people who are homeless, then the state or the city, the county will spend less money trying to provide those folks services. I mean, and it may even, depending on where they're homeless, it may increase and improve the safety of the public. You know, and there's a lot of attention on television and in the debate about those who live in the quote unquote the jungle, which is an area in Seattle. Well, if nobody is living in the jungle because they all have homes and the police don't have to go there, they don't have to worry about violence or fires or anything like that, and that improves public safety. So the fewer people who are homeless, that's probably better for everybody in society, everyone in a community.
What are some possible negative consequences for other people?
The negative consequences of?
Oh, for other people.
Well, I don't know if there are any negatives. If you're homeless today and you're not homeless tomorrow, I don't see any negatives that I can think of off the top of my head for the people around you and in your community. And I think if you know, there are only positive consequences. I don't know if there are statistics out there that show many students are homeless in the state. They live with their families, whether they're in tents or in cars or maybe in shelters. So if there weren't any homeless students, I think things would be nice too. So I can't think of any negative consequences unless folks, they get cost a lot of money to put them in homes and to find homes and to build homes. But at this point, I'd say there's no negative.
One more question.
Sure.
I don't remember who, but someone during the debates talked about veterans housing, and why is that important?
The veterans?
Yes,
Housing.
Well,
housing for
so
veterans.
there's a couple of issues with the veterans. First off, Washington has several places, they have the joint, you have Lewis McChord, Joint Base Lewis McChord, and then you have a Whidbey Island, you have Everett Naval Station, you have Bremerton. So we have a lot of military installations in Washington. We have a lot of veterans in Washington. And so there's just a long, deep history here with Washington and the military. And there's a lot of support for veterans. And so that's why it's important. They vote. So that's one thing. Mr. Inslee, Mr. Bryant, they want their votes. But they also need medical care, some, and they need services. And so every budget, there's a lot of effort and conversation by lawmakers here and in Washington, D.C. of how to help the veterans because they've served the country. Some who are older were drafted and some who are younger volunteered. And the political leaders, many of them have not served in the military, but they still feel it's really important to make sure those who have been served. And that's why. I mean, it's votes. And the reality is there are homeless veterans, and that's what they don't want to see either.
Thank you.
Hello, sir. My name is Victoria, and a question I have is, in the news lately, the main topic is police violence and shootings toward police. How do the candidates feel about the Blue Lives Matter issue?
Well, the candidates haven't talked much about the Blue Lives Matter, so I have to kind of guess a little bit. They have been trying both, and I'm going to start with the governor, Governor Inslee and Bill Bryant. They've been trying to kind of walk, it's a difficult path. They want to show, and they are, empathetic for police, and they want to make sure police are safe when they go out on the street. But they also are concerned when they see incidents around the state where police are involved in the shooting deaths of innocent people or shooting deaths of people with weapons, and they want more information on how that occurred. So what's happening in Washington right now, will happen next year, is there's a group of folks, a task force, that is studying the use of deadly force